talk about the learned helplessness of men, because this is something we really need to think of, especially coming now. A few things that made me think about this, and I want to go into what the real problem is around. Now, my mutual YV Edit has made great content about this learned helplessness. And my mutuals, we all talk about this, right? This video I just saw last week made me want to do a video about this. She made this is one of my mutuals. Go follow her. She goes by Alexandria on TikTok. She made a whole video. I love watching men self-destruct and make excuses for why they're losers. And while women, happen. You'll know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to tie a bunch of things together here about how, men without full-time jobs are 33% more likely to get divorced because wives are leaving men who won't work. Now, while women leave men who don't work, men don't leave women who don't work. And that may seem like women are just cold. We're cold-hearted murderers who only care about money. No, that's not it at all. But I'll go into that in a minute. I also want to use this as an example to talk about a scene in this movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, that's fine. It may be a little bit of a spoiler, but not really, actually. But this movie won like so many awards, including Oscar. And this is a married couple. She directed it. This is the film in French, what it's called. And this is the name in English, Anatomy of a... But Justine Triet and her husband co-wrote this. So I'm going to go into a scene that explains exactly what this problem is about. But first I want to explain the problem itself. Because this is nothing new. Even in 2009, they were talking about women are the breadwinners and men are unemployed. It's because women, we just do. We don't blame, and when it comes to gender and dealing with men especially. But I'm going to talk about how this goes into learned helplessness is also a part of entitlement, which white women, we fall into this all the time. Right? So this is an entitlement thing, but it's about a lot of other things. White men especially are the worst at this learned helplessness crime. This is all stuff we really need to consider, given that women are rightfully concerned that Republicans are going to overturn no-fault divorce, which means if you are married to a bum, you can't leave him. He could just stop working and you're stuck. He could do so many things and you're stuck. Because proving that this man sucks so that you can leave him is going to get very hard. So let's hope they don't overturn this, but that's the plan. Along with overturning everything important, everything. And I've been talking about this for a long time. This was about exercise in general, but I tell you all the time that men financially abuse women through hobbies, expensive, time-consuming hobbies. They also just exploit all the free time in a relationship. Unless women set a lot of boundaries and push back against that entitlement, you're gonna lose time. We know that dads still get extra leisure time and moms are subsidizing it. This was a great article in the New York Times. And we know that good dads get away with so much crap because compared to their, dads and grandpappies who kept their moms hostage or beat the crap out of them and all this other stuff, just, changing some diapers makes them look like a good dad. They know. By comparison, they look good to bad guys. So that's why they hate examples of men doing more than them, because they're like, crap, don't compare me to him. Before I go on, remember, it is FemFreeze. This is something my mutuals and I put together for 1 month, starting December 1st through January 1st, but as long as you want, honestly. You can donate to a fund that helps creators survive the upcoming time instead of pouring your money into men who hate you. Mutuals have talked about this a lot on their pages as well. But also, nightclubs and bars, dating apps, overspending on holidays, social media, your eyeballs, your watch hours, who are you giving it to, and earning below our worth. That also means not losing time in labor where you could actually be making money because you're solving men's problems for them. So investing in women and femmes, but especially the most vulnerable women. So Black women, Indigenous women, other women of color. Pay attention to where you spend your. And if you really like my content and you like my lives, I have some exciting ones coming up. I've already done a ton of them. I have travel content, all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to do watch parties and stuff soon. Please join my Patreon. That's literally what pays my rent because the algorithms are not stable enough to be reliable income. Thank you again for all my Patreons people. And if you can't afford a tier, please go join it in because you can keep up with me. There's a free tier just to get updates, for whatever. Look, he's falling asleep. If you haven't set notifications on here or followed me or comment, all that stuff really helps. Why is it that even back in 2010, they were talking about across race and ethnicity, Men's unemployment rate is married men's is higher than women's often. Why is that? Well, for starters, as somebody who has dated a few bums, men will just let you work yourself to death. They love just being taken care of and not having to do anything because they know that women don't really see it as an option to just not do anything unless you were just born into so much money and privilege or you literally can't work because of a disability or because of something that is beyond your control. We know that women just do. We work, even retired women, even when they retire. Do you know how many of your moms and grandmas are out there like volunteering for a ridiculous amount of things while their dads are playing golf and watching TV and being radicalized online? One of the things that I still can't believe until I lived with it was how many men, white men, it's white men that my experience is with this. I will only speak of white men, particularly because that is the people I know best, who just did nothing. Didn't feel the least bit guilty that you're doing everything. So what I'm saying is that when men are unemployed, women aren't leaving them because they're unemployed. It's because even when they're unemployed, they're worthless. They don't do more, they actually do less. They don't, you know what I mean? And every time I make a video about this, read my comments, hundreds of comments talking about how men had jobs, great jobs when they met. And then as soon as they got married, they just decided not to work one day and then decided to be full-time entrepreneurs, which means never building a business that's never going to happen. You know, they talk, but they don't do. And then when it doesn't succeed, they blame somebody. So what is this all about? This is about entitlement. Again, this is a male entitlement crisis. This is not a male loneliness crisis. They are lonely, absolutely. But their loneliness is about something so much bigger and deeper that they don't want to deal with. They just blame us for not wanting to marry these losers. There's a lot of explanations of what learned helplessness looks like. But I love this one that I found by Aletha Fitzpatrick called Entitlement as a form of learned helplessness. Right out of the gate, there are a lot of various terms that kind of but don't quite cover this behavior. So learned helplessness occurs when an individual continuously faces a negative, uncontrollable situation and stops trying to change their circumstances even when they have ability to do so. There's Psychology Today says that's definitely a thing. You know, as somebody, I understand learned helplessness because I have fallen into it so many times in my life. So I'm not saying that I'm not talking about something I don't have experience from actually falling into it myself. And also more often than not, being on the receiving end of usually a man's learned helplessness, but it's not just men, okay? This is like across gender. A lot of times it is because of being traumatized. It can be because you are so much PTSD, because like there's so many things behind it, but that's not what I'm talking about in this video. Especially as a childhood SA survivor, I still fall into this. When I don't know how to do my taxes, the IRS told me I owed $50,000 in taxes for the year 2019, even though I made $9,000 that year. I was like, what? And then I just didn't know what to do. I froze. So, you know, I'm clearing that up right now. By the way, for those people who helped me, Patreon people especially, we figured out what it was. One of the magazines that I worked for, I made $1,000 from them, and they claimed that I made $113,000. So now I have the burden of proof on me, and lots of time and money wasted trying to prove that I did not earn that. But anyway, I fell into learned helplessness myself, also ADHD and all this other stuff. So I'm not saying that this is just men or just white men, okay? But when that is the focus of this, because as we are moving forward and seeing women suffer more and more from men just not doing anything, not coming up with solutions, refusing to learn things, do things for themselves, and we have to stop enabling this behavior. And there's lots of ways to do it. We can't fix it until we can name it and what it looks like and recognize it and how it plays out and how it impacts us to motivate us to stop enabling. And mothers absolutely set their sons up for this by not teaching them basic life skills. I've talked about that. I'm not going to blame mothers for patriarchy existing, but I will hold mothers accountable for not pushing back against it and just like literally birthing their future oppressor and men who are going to do this to all the women in their life. See it from a young age, and as somebody who has a nephew and who was also a teacher for a while, I had to check myself constantly to see, wait, would I be doing this with a girl? Am I treating this kid differently? Is the way I would just jump to do something for a boy or coddle him in a way that I would not for a girl? Well, we got to check. Not men's fault that they were not taught these basic life skills, like how to take care of themselves, but it is their responsibility to change that. Okay? Moving out of victimhood is something that I think probably everyone can relate to. We've all probably fallen into this at certain point. Feigned ignorance is another manipulation tactic being used to avoid accountability and confuse the other party to gain the upper hand. That includes deflecting criticism, evade responsibilities, manipulate others into revealing more information than intended, blah, 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 right? Okay? Feigned ignorance can include gaslighting, playing the victim, fear-mongering, guilt-tripping, divide and conquer, all these techniques. Okay? When we come to weaponized incompetence, was another form of all that. I don't know how to do it, even though I do. My dad literally admitted to this. He knew how to change diapers. He pretended like he didn't have to, and he literally said to us, with no shame, that he would let me and my sister just sit in our diapers full of crap. And he said, just let it ride till your mom came home. I was like, I can't believe you aren't embarrassed to admit that. He also pretended to not know how to make a bed until the day he died, even though he was in the military, in the Navy, and had to bounce a quarter off of the ones of his own bed because it had to be that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm telling you, having a father who was a narcissist and just didn't even care to hide this stuff and admitted to weaponized incompetence, I'm telling you, they're doing it. And the systems uphold this by emailing the female caregivers, like always just, they just assume that the dads aren't going to do anything, so they perpetuate it by always making the moms responsible for all of this stuff at school with the kids, doctor's appointments, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about entitlement. And this is really the heart of a lot of it. It's not all of it. Again, I've already gone into this. This video is not about the other stuff, especially when it's rooted in trauma and all that stuff. Although, again, you can get stuck in victimhood and not even help yourself, as I have fallen into many times in my life. This is about the entitlement that feeds into all this. This kind of learned helplessness, and it comes from a place of entitlement. And yes, it is often men or white people, and white men especially, who learn a sense of entitlement in cultures that don't hold them accountable for more. He says, I don't believe white male mediocrity is because white men are inherently more mediocre, and neither do I. I know men who are not at all mediocre, and that's why other men hate these men and call them simps. They're like, shh, don't let them know that this is all a ruse. I do think they have often been socialized to be. And this is why me and my mutuals, and especially Leslie Witherspoon, one of my moderators and friends, and also makes content. She is raising boys, and boy, does she talk about this a lot. And I did a live with her. I'm going to release those videos, I swear, as soon as I figure out how to edit all this stuff. And how I've learned from her and her lessons about mothering two teenage boys, about how much of this is really socialization. This is not genetic. We're not doing bioessentialism here. There are differences in gender. There's, the hormones and all this stuff can affect things, but most of this comes down to socialization. Because for what we have in this country, and this is the United States, is centuries of old default affirmative action for white men. So they are the ones not held to a high standard, which we literally just saw in this election. Literally a criminal, convicted rapist, worst businessman ever, won against Kamala Harris. That nothing proves this more than that. Yes, women do it too. We've been socialized not to learn to do more manly things and to dumb ourselves down so as to not trigger male fragility or white fragility or whatever. I don't really like that term because we're not really fragile. It's all like a ruse. But I understand the term and what it's going for. Because same with men. They're not fragile. They just don't want to hear the truth. Somebody who was single for most of my life until my 40s. I've been taking care of myself so long that I've had to learn to let men help me, because I was just like, no, I can do it myself. Shut up. Don't insult me. It's very empowering know how to do things. And as somebody who grew up as a little white girl in the South who was supposed to be a delicate little flower and fragile and pure and all these really super racist tropes. When I say racist, not against me, but the white, innocent white, fragile, pure white woman is literally the root of white supremacy and anti-blackness. That's why we have to deal with this stuff, because we're being used as a chess piece to make white rich men more powerful. So becoming more independent and not dependent on men, and taking care of myself and not relying on men who hate me anyway, and not believing this myth that I'm just you know what I mean, was a big part of my own personal journey, and also towards liberation and pushing back towards about all of this shit. And because of all this, instead, women, especially women of color, are instead overfunctioners, especially when it comes to what has become the remains of often invisible and unpaid emotional labor in both the home and at the workplace. It's hard to avoid it when these systems are set up this way, and individually we are taught this. It's hard to avoid, especially when patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism set up not just an expectation, but a reality founded quite literally in the entitlement to and exploitation of other people's labor. But which has evolved into where the labor is invisible by default. There's an expectation for some that their needs will be met without even considering the cost to others. So as a white person, I have to always keep this in mind. What do I expect from other people who are not white because of my own entitlement? And what do I expect myself to do for men because they're men that I really shouldn't be doing? And it's also why equity often feels like oppression to those who have privilege. When people don't get what they feel entitled to, they feel deprived, angry, mistreated, and oppressed, which is what you see all over right now, right? There is a difference between just and unjust entitlement. As a woman, I need to feel entitled to free time, to being cared for rest, joy, and all of these things, especially spare time, since we know that men are going to take up all that. But as a white person, I need to also not feel entitled to people do things for me because of some bias that I was taught through my own socialization. No easy answer to this, but what we can be aware of is where are we overfunctioning because of entitlement of others, and where are we underfunctioning out of our own entitlement? I love that frame. And that is why a lot of unemployed men feel like victims of a system, victims for being maybe fired, victims of But then because of their, and maybe it's just, capitalism is screwing them over. And because they're men, they feel like, yeah, but even though I'm unemployed and have all this spare time, and my wife is working crazy hours to pay for our rent and all the bills, why should I have to do women's work? Why should I have to cook, clean, take care of the house? Why should I be super motivated to go find a job when it looks like she's going to take care of all of it and do the domestic labor, mental load, emotional labor, and fork me too? So why would men go out and find jobs if you're going to hold it down? In fact, Drew Barrymore had Martha Stewart on her show. We know I've already covered Martha. I may actually need to do a part 2 about how even one of the most hardworking, successful women, first billionaire woman, or no, I hate billionaires, but whatever. Even she ended up with men who sucked. Her dad was a hobosexual. Kids work so hard. Of course he did. He sat there and barked orders and made the kids garden and do all this stuff. She was out modeling because he was what they call an idle man. I call him hobosexual, maybe passive man, idle man, whatever we want to call it. Drew asked Martha, have you ever been with an idle man? Just like a man not doing anything? No, they don't interest me. I have, says Drew. Oh, yeah? Yeah, I can't recommend it. She says how it took her being with an idle man to realize that her motto is, if you don't work, we don't work. This needs to be all of our motto, because I am telling you, especially with economically things not going so well, possibly because of billionaires taking over everything now because they just can way more easily. We're gonna have more and more idle men who don't want to work or who can't find work but won't even try that hard to find it. Like, women always try. We always find solutions. That's a huge statement. It's a big generalization. Even when we don't have paid work, I know so few women who just don't learn or do something. I know so few men who do that unless they find an addiction, like going to the gym or becoming obsessed with marathons or blah, blah, blah. Men do this too a lot of times. But I'm telling you, in heteronormative marriage, you will rarely find a woman, unless they are just super well off and unless she's like an abuser somehow or whatever, who is not, who is resting more than he is, because the emotional labor and all the stuff she's doing, I am telling you, is always going to be more than him unless she is pushing back hard. So I just realized that I think I want to make a whole separate part 2 to break down that scene in Anatomy of a Fall, because there's so much in it. This could be its own separate video. So now that I've framed what I want to talk about in terms of learned helplessness and how it is basically rooted in entitlement for so many men, I want to show you scene by scene how men think and how they justify them being the victim of the lives they choose, and how they find excuses to blame it on women all the time, and why how this plays out. This scene is so beautifully written. It's like a must watch to understand what you will see play out in most heteronormative marriages, especially the more entitled that man feels. So stay tuned for part 2. Let me know if you liked this, saw this, mention part 2, or the comment song. Let me know if you heard that comment song. And please, please, please go to femfreeze.org. See what we're up to. There's so much going on with it, and it's really important. This is just only a month long, although you can do that really long. And please, please follow my Patreon even if you can't afford a tier, just get on it so that you can at least, if I have new stuff coming out, things, then you will find out about it. It's really hard to reach y'all because I'm completely hinging everything on the algorithms sending you things, and we know the algorithms are very, very sexist, racist, and all of the bad things. So which is why all the more why you have to give your watch hours to Black women, especially because they're going to get even more suppressed than someone like me. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for part 2. A special song, a comment song at a French monster truck rally. That's right, a French monster truck rally. Yeah, 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 this is a comment song, a preview of the most random kind of content I show over there on my Patreon. This is not actually normal. I show all kinds of cool other stuff that's not like weird stuff like this. I mean, I didn't have time to actually harass a woman during the show. Anyway, the monster truck show, monster truck comment song. This is what you get on my Patreon, in addition to many lives, amazing authors and journalists and activists and just beautiful, amazing, creative people. Anyway, join my Patreon if you want some random stuff. I'm giving you a little preview of how delicately this monster truck is running over a car. Like, this is not American, okay? They're in the air there. Anyway, this is a terrible song, but I'm just making it up as I go. I love this photo of me so much. Soon I'm gonna do the French wrestling version. Look at this. Yeah, I have endless content, y'all. Oh my God, this is a wrestler. Yeah, skinny jeans. Anyway. Let me tell you, my Patreon is special to me. So join if you can afford it. I'd appreciate it. Anyway, monster truck wrestling song. Did you hear it? Let me know. Bye.